Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, babies in their diapers, welcome to the Tiberius Show with your host, Tiberius Boy.
That's me, Tiberius.
Today, we're going to talk about some very awesome stuff. We have a classic video game from my dad's Commodore 64, a book about a dungeoneer and his adventures, and we have a totally awesome guest. Today we have the one, the only, the amazing Warren Davis. Warren is the creator of the classic video game Qbert and has been inducted into the International Video Game Hall of Fame.
Hi there, Tiberius. How you doing?
Pretty good. Well, today we're going to start off with a video of the week, and this is going to be a bounce.
And now it's time for the video game of the week.
Today's video game is Slinky. This game caused me for the Commodore 64 that my dad has. He had me play on an emulator and told me that it was a clone of the famous game called Qbert, which you made.
I have heard of Qbert.
Now, you can play thousands of Commodore 64 games at c64online.com. So, the game starts off with some songs and what looks like a little Slinky, like the metal one that you push down the stairs. Then you just from tile to tile to change the colors of the tile, attempting to change the entire rectangular board. There are a few bad guys out to get you. First is a drop of water that can make you wet and very fast. Then there's a cloud of dirt, this will make you dirty and a lot slower. Then you have a magnet that can carry you away. Oh, and if you get dirty and wet and you get rusted, and then you're carried away by the oil can. You don't want that.
No, I don't. It sounds like a fun game, though.
Very fun. Well, the game was kind of cool, and my dad really would get excited about some of the music playing each time I finished a level. He told me this was the very first game he got to play on the Commodore 64, and later he learned it was a clone of this cool game called Qbert, which you made.
I've heard of that, yeah. Yeah, but I've never seen this particular clone. I've seen a few clones over the years, not this one though. It sounds interesting.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. Well, I would say that the controls are kind of hard. You have to move diagonally, and to do that, you would have to press two buttons at the same time.
Yeah, see, in the arcade version of Qbert, you just had to push the stick in the right direction, and it was all taken care of.
I give Slinky 8 out of 10 stars because I like watching my dad light up when I was playing it, and I can tell he was reliving some childhood memories. I really think it would be more fun on the real Qbert game on a real arcade machine. My dad really needs to fix our arcade machine. And now it's time for the book of the week, Dungeoneer Adventures Lost in the Mushroom Maze. This was written by Ben Costa and James Parks. Let me to the back of the book. In fact, Warren, would you like to do the honors?
I would be happy to, Tiberius. What's Dungeoneer Academy? Well, it's a school for kids to learn the ropes of being an explorer in the land of Eam, a place full of monsters, mazes, mayhem, and maybe even a little magic. It's cool, right?
Yeah. Well, this is an error book that is worth 11 whole points. It's rated for 5th grade and first month. So, this is a fictional story about Coop, who's a dungeoneer. He has friends with him that are like fictional characters, but in this world, it's all real. So, the story starts off with 4 friends being chased by what I thought was a goat, but guess what? It wasn't. Then they show that they're people in a class, and they have teams. The friends are on the green team with Cooperson. There was Coop, of course, and yes, that's his name. And then there was Augie, Mindy, and Daz. They were on the green team trying to finish a pop quiz, which basically for the Dungeoneers is an obstacle course, but they all failed. Right. Then a few things happened at the school. And the finals were coming up, which is like a super hard obstacle course that is really big, and something dangerous would probably be involved, like spikes or something.
Sounds exciting.
Very exciting. Well, the finals were in the fungal jungle, and well, something bad happened. Well, you know what? I can't tell you the whole story because I think you should read the book yourself. I can tell you that it was amazing. I strongly suggest this book.
Well, if you like it, then I like it.
Well, I give Dungeoneer Adventures Lost in the Mushroom Maze 9 out of 10 stars because at the end, I was happy for Coop and had a mixed feeling about the other members of his team. Uh-oh. I hope I don't give away too much.
I think you just whetted everybody's appetite for this book. Now,
See CWSmithLaw.com.
You can call him at 407-801-2667.
Wait, you are not Chuck.
My dad can help when people get hurt. He loves to help people.
If you are ever injured at work or in a car accident, you should call my friend Chuck.
You can call him at 407-801-2667.
That website again is CWSmithLaw.com.
Offices, Orlando.
Does it actually have that much W's?
Now, it's time for an interview of an interesting person. Today's guest is going to be so much fun. Today we have the one, the only, the amazing Warren Davis.
well, hello.
Warren, hello there. Warren is the creator of the classic game Q-bert and has been into the International Video Game Hall of Fame.
That is true. And before we go any further, I just want to make sure everyone knows that there were other members of the Qbert team. So I want to give a shout out to Jeff Lee, who is the artist who created the graphics and the characters, and to Dave Thiel, who did all the sounds.
Wow.
I was the designer and programmer.
Cool. So first off, how are you enjoying being on the show?
I'm loving it. I have to say I've been on a lot of podcasts, but I have never had quite as charming a host as yourself, Tiberius.
Thank you. Okay, so my dad could not wait to show me your game Qbert, as well as a number of clones. Can you tell me what gave you the idea to make such an amazing game?
Well, basically I was hired to make video games, and I had never done that before. And I kind of just so it was kind of my job. I had to come up with an idea. But Qbert actually had a little bit more of a circuitous history. It didn't spring as an idea for a game. It actually started as a programming exercise. Ooh. So I was new. I had never made a video game. I knew a little bit about programming. I had a degree in engineering, but I wanted to teach myself some techniques such as randomness and gravity. And I was inspired by seeing some artwork on a screen that another programmer was using. It was basically an illusion that makes, even though everything's in 2 dimensions, it looks like 3-dimensional cubes filling a screen.
Huh.
And when I saw that, it occurred to me that if you carved that into a pyramid shape with 1 cube on top, 2 after it, and then 3 and 4 and so on, that if a ball were to fall on the top cube, it would have one of 2 directions in which to bounce, right? Down to the right or down to the left. And so that's a random choice. And with 1 random byte of data, I could determine the entire path of a ball from top to bottom.
Whoa.
And then, of course, just to mimic gravity and have the ball fall and bounce, that required some tricks because, again, we're not in a 3D world. We're in a 2D world. You've got to simulate that. And we didn't have processing power like you do now. It's, you could program a ball bouncing down a pyramid in about 30 seconds in some of the tools they have nowadays.
That's true.
Back then, it was a lot different, and we had time constraints and memory constraints, and we had no trigonometry functions or anything like that. So it was just sort of an exercise for me. Which I did. I had balls bouncing down a pyramid, and when people looked at it, they said, "Well, that looks pretty cool. Maybe you should do something with that." So then I thought, "Oh, okay, maybe I should do something with that," and it just sort of evolved into a game. That game became Qbert.
Wow. So how long have you been making video games?
Well, Qbert was my first, and that was in 1982 is when I was hired, January of 1982. 41 years ago, more or less.
Huh. You have had some amazing success with Qbert, and I watched some videos, and then I even found a version I can play on my browser. How did you come up with the character with a long nose?
Well, like I said, the artist who came up with the characters was Jeff Lee. Jeff Lee was an artist who pretty much, I think at the time, was the only artist who was just an artist. Some of the programmers created their own video game art, but Jeff was available for the rest of us. And it was a very small staff at the time. Gottlieb, the company we worked for, the company that made Qbert, Gottlieb was pretty new in the video game business at the time. So it was a small staff. And I was just very lucky to have Jeff as a collaborator. He was incredibly talented. And he came up with Qbert. In fact, the character was created before the game. When I realized I wanted to do something with this pyramid of cubes, I went to Jeff and I said, "Do you have characters lying around that I might be able to use?" And he had a whole bunch of characters that he had created on his own, and he put them up on a screen so I could look at them. And the one that jumped out at me as looking somewhat pathetic was the big orange guy with the big nose, and I thought, oh, that'd be a good player character.
Huh. So my dad said the first idea for the name of the game was Snots and Boogers. Is he right? And if so, how'd you end up coming up with the name Qbert?
Yeah, well, no, that's a sort of a apocryphal tale, but it's not exactly true. It was a joke. It was just a joke. Jeff Lee made the joke, that the game should be called Snots and Boogers, but it's not something that I ever took seriously. I never intended. Nobody, I think, ever expected that the game was going to be called that. It was just a joke around the office.
Okay.
But to come up with the name was difficult because I didn't have a name for the game while I was developing it. I just called it the Cubes game, and I didn't have names for any.
That's why it's called Qbert.
Exactly.
So
yes. So the name Qbert came out of cubes. Yeah, very good. You're very perceptive. Yeah. But it didn't have the name. The name Qbert didn't come up until much later pretty much at the very end of development when we realized we had to give the game a name to send it out. So and a lot of people thought whatever the name of the character is going to be the name of the game. I think everybody was sort of on board with that. But we had a meeting. It just came out of a very long, difficult meeting where we were not inspired, but somehow at the end we got Qbert.
Wow. Now I played it and I died like a lot. I thought it was cool when it had the symbols on top of his head like he was saying bad words. My dad does not want me saying bad words, but losing in video games does make me mess up sometimes.
Yes, that's the whole idea was, we thought, well, it's frustrating to get hit on the head and die, or to jump off and plummet to your death. People don't like those things.
Jump on a ball when they just figured there.
Exactly. So, the swearing balloon, as we called it, because it's basically a cartoon balloon. That was our response to, you couldn't have him actually swear. So that was our response. Now that cartoon balloon, that had been around for decades. If you look at old cartoons from the early 20th century, early 1900s, you'll see that in cartoons a lot. That's how people swear. It's just a whole bunch of these characters. You presume what they're saying.
Yeah, that's true.
Without being literal. Yeah.
It's like you hold the shift button and you just spam a bunch of numbers.
Kind of.
Make symbols.
Yep, exactly.
So what is the most fun part about making video games?
Wow. There's a whole lot of things that are fun about it. Seeing people's reactions, seeing people enjoy it and have fun playing it, that is probably the most rewarding part of it for me. Sometimes if you have a technical challenge and you're not sure how you're going to solve a problem, and then you think of the solution and it works, that's very satisfying. So, there's both technical and artistic pleasures in making a video game, I think.
So what are the most misunderstood parts about your business?
Oh, that's an interesting question, Tiberius. Misunderstood. I think maybe a lot of people might think just because video games are fun to play, that they must be equally fun to make. That's not true.
Not at all.
It's very challenging. It's a lot of work, as you might imagine. And you know, the process of making a video game is nothing like the process of playing one. They're completely different experiences.
You're true.
Yeah. That was a great
So, how does making video games make the world a better place?
Well, I mean, you can only hope when you make a video game that it helps make the world a better place. I think
You're true. That's
video games are pretty much like songs or movies or TV shows or anything else, in that some of them will make the world a better place. Some of them will not. Some of them don't try to, you know. Yeah, it's I think you know, if you set out to make the world a better place and you succeed, that's you're very, very fortunate indeed.
cool. So, what is the hardest part about working as a video game programmer?
Well, you know, deadlines are sometimes hard. You know, finding inspiration can sometimes be hard. You know, sometimes, you know, you want things to work really well, but they're not working, and you know, you might bang your head against the wall trying to figure out why. There's a lot of frustrations in creating a video game, but you know, you just attack those problems as you would attack any other problem in life. You just got to take a breath. Sometimes you have to walk away from it for a little bit and come back fresh. But you know, there are technical, and it's the same thing as I was saying before. There are technical challenges, and then there are artistic challenges. Both.
Yeah, right. So, how long does it take from an idea to actually get to play a game?
Well, that has changed over the years. You know, back in the day when I was making Qbert, when I started out in the early 80s, you could make a video game. You know, the teams were very small. Like I said, you know, Qbert was me as a programmer, Jeff as an artist, Dave as a sound designer, and that game was made in about 5 months. Then, you know, it went through some testing and some tweaking. But I'd say 5 months. Some game, you know, maybe 4 months, maybe 6 months for some games. It really didn't take a whole lot of time. Nowadays, of course, games are much more complicated. They're more complicated graphically. They're more complicated technically. And, you know, depending on how a game is created, it could take a year. It could take some games take 2 years. Back in my day, there were games that took over a year, but that was usually because somebody didn't know what they were doing.
Okay, so my dad said that you were inducted into the International Video Game Hall of Fame. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, that was a very unexpected honor a few years ago. People just contacted me and said, "Would you like to be in the Video Game Hall of Fame?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure." And I was very honored. It was really a touching and moving experience for me. I went out to the ceremony. It was in Ottumwa, Iowa, where Walter Day, you know, created record keeping for video games and founded basically, you know, what we call esports today.
Whoa.
Yeah, and just met a wonderful bunch of people, and yeah, it's just a very, very wonderful honor, I'd say.
Wow. So my dad said that you worked on different games like Mortal Kombat and Terminator 2. I love Terminator 2. What was the game that's the most fun to work on?
Well, honestly, I maybe the most fun game that I've ever worked on was a game called Us versus Them. It was a Laserdisc game, and it came out during a period when like Dragon's Lair and Space Ace, Firefox, Laserdiscs were thought to be an amazing new technology that was going to revolutionize video games. Unfortunately, it turned out to be a fad that didn't last, because unfortunately those Laserdisc players weren't quite ready to be out in arcade cabinets. They just weren't reliable. But you know, for me, making Us versus Them, we were out you know, flying around in Learjets, shooting aerial footage, and flying in helicopters through the Chicago River in downtown Chicago. We were out in fields in Kalamazoo, Michigan, traipsing through snowy tree-lined fields to get. And then we were in a studio with actors shooting all of these scenes in a control room and some, comical little interstitial elements. So, I had a blast making that game. That game was extraordinarily fun to make. And you can still see it. Some arcades have it, but it's also available through MAME, and a project called Daphne allows you to play it on your PC. Don't get me wrong. I had a lot of fun making Terminator 2. Terminator 2, I came in midway. I wasn't the lead on that project. I was just a senior engineer, but I did make some contributions, and I enjoyed that. Mortal Kombat, I had almost nothing to do with. I had one little minor contribution to the attract mode that really had nothing to do with the game, other than I did create the digitizing system that the programmers of Mortal Kombat, I should say the creators, Ed Boon and John Tobias, who created Mortal Kombat, used my system to digitize live actors and get their images in the game. So that was a contribution.
Wow.
But it really had nothing to do with the actual gameplay.
Huh. Now, I reviewed a clone of Qbert, which was the first game my dad ever got to play. Do you like that people love your game so much that they copy elements of it?
Oh yeah, it's very flattering. As the saying goes, imitation is the sincerest form of flattery. People wouldn't be doing that if the game wasn't popular and liked. So yeah, it's very I probably would not like it as much if in some way it was taking money out of my pocket. But since I really didn't make any money from Qbert, I really didn't have a monetary stake in it. So it's just flattering.
Mm-hmm. So did you ever want to make changes or add levels to Qbert after you made it?
Yes, and I did. Shortly after Qbert came out, I was getting word. Word was filtering back to Gottlieb that just some people in some arcades, not a lot, were playing it for hours and hours on a single quarter. I mean, a lot of people, I'd say even most people, were losing quarters in it very quickly. But there were just a few people who had mastered it and just were so good at it. And I thought, oh no, because it was my first game, I thought I made it too easy. So I went back and basically retuned the game completely, changed the order of the levels and made it faster from the get-go. And, I worked with Jeff Lee on it, and that we added a bonus round. Anyway, this thing was called Faster, Harder, More Challenging Qbert, and it never was officially released. It was done a few months after Qbert was released, so it came out in 1983, but they never actually released it. And so I held on to those ROMs and kept them in my personal cabinet at home. And then in the late 1990s, I'd say around 1997, when the MAME project was starting to get going, I released those ROMs to somebody who got them into MAME. So it's been available through MAME since the late 1990s.
So if you could think of one thing that would make your job easier or better, what would it be?
Wow. One thing? Is it just one thing? Can I have more?
One thing.
Oh, man. No deadlines. Although, I can't really say that because sometimes deadlines are good. Sometimes deadlines
Yeah, you're right.
force you to come up with solutions, that maybe you wouldn't come up with if you had all the time in the world. So I don't know.
I would say infinite wishes, but
I would say maybe catered meals all the time. Just whatever I asked for. People just brought me food. That'd be nice.
would be.
Wouldn't that be cool?
How does that make your job better, though?
Yes, if I'm well fed, actually, there was one thing. Like the offices at Gottlieb were very cold. Like even in the summer,
goodness.
in the summertime, I would literally sometimes have to go outside to warm my hands up because I couldn't feel my fingers. They were so cold. So, yeah, better temperature regulation in the office might be one. Yeah.
Trust me, we need that in my school.
See, you know what I'm talking about.
It is cold.
Yeah.
The teachers even brought blankets.
Oh my God. Yeah.
So, what was the craziest situation that you have run into while making video games?
The craziest situation. Wow. Let's see. There have been some crazy situations. I mean, there was a time when I was making Us versus Them. Actually, uh, we wanted to show it at a trade show in I think it was the spring of 1984, and it wasn't going to be ready. And I just, busted my ass. I was working like crazy to just try to get something to show at this trade show. And 3 days before, management decided they weren't going to show it. They didn't want to take the chance. And I knew I would have got it ready, but they didn't show it. So that was a little crazy. I was working like crazy. I mean, I was working like crazy on that project anyway. I was programming it during the day and editing the video at night. That was just a crazy time in general.
Wow.
I'm trying to think of other things. Well, I can tell you something that was crazy. I worked on the game Revolution X, and
Whoa.
Revolution X featured Aerosmith, the band Aerosmith, rock legends, and they came to our studio. So Aerosmith was hanging out in our studio for 3 full days, and we videotaped them for the game to digitize them, and that was crazy. Just because you come to work and hey, you're hanging out with Aerosmith. That's not something that happens every day.
No, that is not.
So
what advice would you give to my listeners if they wanted to grow up and work in the video game industry?
Well, I think playing a lot of video games helps, so you know what's out there. Not with the intention of duplicating it, but with the intention of knowing, what you can do to be different. You know what I mean? You want to break some new ground, and then develop a skill that is necessary for video games. Nowadays, you can be a programmer, or you could be a sound designer, or you can be an artist. And in all of those things, you can specialize in a million different ways. You can also be a writer. So you want to develop some skill. You can also be a producer. You don't actually do any of the work. You just manage it, which is a skill unto itself. It's really a difficult skill to be a good producer. So I would say just develop skills that are needed for the video game industry, and then get some experience. Do what you can to get some experience.
Mm-hmm. So what is the greatest challenge that most people in the video game industry are dealing with today?
Well, I don't know. I'm not really a part of the video game industry in any big way. But I would imagine, trying to be creative, trying to come up with, something that's new and groundbreaking. Trying to, I'd say another challenge has kind of always been a challenge is what I would call the work-life balance. You want to be dedicated to your job, but you also have to have, a life. You have to be, you have to enjoy your life. I think that's a challenge in not only video games, but many industries. But yeah, I'm not really a part of the industry in a big way, so it's hard for me to say.
Okay. Well, do you think designing video games is easier or harder now that we have Scratch and all these other visual coding systems?
Yeah, you're very true. You're very right. In some ways, it's easier. Like I've used Unreal and Unity, and you can prototype things so quickly that are very advanced, and that makes your job easier. But then, the fact is, everybody else can do that as well. So now the challenge is to do something extraordinary. With the same playing field, when the playing field is leveled and everybody has these amazing tools, then it really becomes about finding something that's actually going to break through and be noticed, and is going to be fun. I think that's the thing you don't ever want to lose when you're making video games. That ultimately you're trying to create an experience,
something new and different.
New and different. I say I'm a big fan of new and different, but new and different doesn't always immediately mean fun or successful. Mm-hmm. And that's why it's an art and not really a science, because it can go so many different ways. It can.
That's true. So I assume that you do play video games. So what's your favorite one that you did not make?
A game that I like that I didn't make.
Mm-hmm.
I love adventure games and puzzle solving games. Back in the 90s, there was a PC game called the Pandora Directive. And I just felt like that had a fantastic mix of storytelling and puzzle solving, interacting with characters, a little bit of action even. I just felt it was like a truly interactive story. A lot of the modern games, I just feel it's too much cutscene, and then you're just guiding you from cutscene to cutscene, which I don't like. But I did
Too many
play,
cutscenes are way too much.
Yeah, I agree.
It's like in the modern games, there's way too many. So if there were like a third of the cutscenes,
yeah,
that was okay. It would be okay.
Well, I just played a game called Abduction with an O, Abduction, by the creators of Myst. Now, Myst was a fantastic game, but I played Abduction in VR, and boy, I just thought that was phenomenal. Just really, I'm a big fan of VR. I love being in an immersive world.
I
and
am
I just
too.
thought this game was phenomenal. It was a top-notch, moving around in this world and trying to figure out what you're supposed to do. And there's really no cutscenes. Every now and then you might encounter a video that's so short. But
Does it cost any money?
Yeah, you can buy it on Steam. I have an
much?
Oculus. I have an Oculus. Well, it was on sale. I bought it for $6 on Steam, and then I used the virtual desktop to connect to the Oculus Quest 2. And the virtual desktop costs $20. So it was a $26 investment, but I was well worth it. Well worth it.
Wow. I'll have to search that up.
Yeah, and I like The Room as well in VR. There's a VR game called The Room VR. Just again, fantastic, beautiful graphics, atmosphere, sound, everything about it.
Cool.
Yeah, loved it.
Okay, so what's your favorite book to read?
Not counting the one I wrote.
Yes.
My book that I wrote, I just happen to have a copy here. But
not that book, not that book.
Well, let's see then. I love science fiction. And I like Richard Matheson as a writer, as a science fiction writer. I like a lot of his books. I Am Legend was always one of my favorites. But I also lately, I like a lot of nonfiction. And I do like reading memoirs from a variety of people, just people that I'm interested in. If they've written a memoir, I'm fascinated to read a memoir. And what I think I like even better than that is to hear it if they read it themselves. So it's hearing somebody that you like or admire tell you their life story. So it's kind of fun.
So do you have a Facebook or a website for my listeners who want to follow you?
I do. I have a Facebook page. I have my personal Facebook page, but I won't accept any friend requests. But I do have a public page, which is facebook.com/WarrenDavis29. So that's one way to keep in touch. My Twitter is @WarrenDavis29. And I do have a website. If people are interested in purchasing a signed copy of my book, because my book is available pretty much anywhere online. But if you want a signed copy, you can go to Warren Davis Shop. That's all one word. .square.site SITE, and I have a little website there where people can purchase my book.
Sweet.
Signed.
Okay, so what's that one question that you think I forgot to ask you?
Let's see. One question that you forgot that I think you forgot to ask me. Where's my book? Where's my book sold? You didn't ask me that. I had to offer.
Well, where is it sold?
Everywhere. It's available everywhere online. It's or what's your book about? That's another one.
Well, what is your book about?
So I was in the video arcade industry for 14 years. And like I said, I worked not only at Gottlieb on Qbert and Us versus Them, but I also worked for Williams Bally Midway on a number of games and also creating that digitizing system. And all of my stories 14 years of arcade games, Mortal Kombat, NBA Jam, Revolution X, Terminator 2. All the stories about all the games I had anything to do with are in this book. So I think it is of interest to people, and you can get it, like I said, on Amazon or any other online bookstore. And if you want one signed, I can do that. As well at that website. And the other thing is there's a New Wave Toys. I don't know if you're aware. New Wave Toys is a company that makes little mini 1/6 scale arcade games. So they have duplicated Qbert in about 12 inches or 11 inches. And it's a perfectly functional game, just a very small scale. So I encourage you to go to their site, newwavetoys.com, and look at all of the cool stuff they have. They have tons of cool stuff. Qbert is just one game, one of their games. They have many others, and they're amazing. Check out the reviews online. They're just fantastic.
Okay. Well, thank you, Warren, for being my special guest. Can you stick around for Math Corners?
My pleasure. Yes, of course. I love math. Let's do math.
Yes.
Tiberius' favorite subject, it's Math Corners!
Well, thank you, Warren, for helping me with Math Corners. This week, we're going to do some Qbert math? Wait, how to get math from a video game? Well, my dad found tons of math about Qbert, from binomials to the minimum moves to solve a certain level.
That's pretty amazing. There's a lot of math involved in video games, actually.
So today we're going to solve the question of how many ways can Qbert get to the bottom of the triangle if he only moves left or right down?
It's a good question.
So to determine this problem, you have to determine how many rows there are to move down. In the version that my dad showed me, there were 7 rows. So Qbert has to go down 6 times. Each time he can either move left or right, so there are 2 options for each of the 6 rows. If you remember, when you would square or cube a number. Now, all you have to do is 2 to the power of 6 rows. So 2 times 2 is 4, times 2 is 8, times 2 is 16, times 2 is 32, and finally 32 times 2 is 64. So there are 64 different ways for Qbert to get to the bottom of the triangle without moving up.
That is exactly right. And that fits in one byte. So if you think of a bit, 0 or 1, 0 is left, 1 is right, or vice versa, either way. And then a 1 byte can have values from 0 to 255. So you could actually go not only 6, you could go 8 rows with a single byte of data. The path can be determined in a single byte for up to 8 rows.
Wow.
That's math.
That's a lot of math. Well, my dad said this would be the groundwork to learning about binary numbers, binomials, and even program how many moves to get to a certain location. Of course, that is assuming there are no bad guys trying to get you.
Yeah, the bad guys do get in the way.
Snaky.
Yeah, they get in the way.
So, Warren, did you ever think when you were creating games that they would be used to teach students math?
No, but I'm thrilled that they are. I think that's fantastic.
Now, Warren, my teacher said that I would use math every day. Do you still use math in your everyday life?
Sure, of course. Yeah, I mean, come on. Going to the grocery store, you want to make sure you're paying the right amount. You have to add up things, to computing tips. If you're in a restaurant, you have to know percentages. Yeah. I always loved math. I wasn't one of those people who hated math. I embraced math from an early age, and I was on my math team in high school. We would actually go to competitions and solve math problems, and to me, that was just tons of fun.
Well, thank you so much, Warren, for your help with Math Corners.
Of course, my pleasure.
Over 40 years, Lighthouse Central Florida has provided education, independent life skills, and job training to thousands of Central Floridians who live with blindness or any degree of vision loss. Whether it's picking out clothes in the morning or just moving around your community and serving Orange, Seminole, and Osceola counties, contact Lighthouse Central Florida at 407-898-2483 or visit them online at lighthousecfl.org.
And now it's time for the Heart of a Lion. As you know, we talk about the qualities of living by the heart of a lion, which stands for leadership, integrity, obedience, and nobility. This week, we're going to talk about integrity. For me, I think integrity is doing what is right even when no one else is looking. The qualities of integrity is honesty, sincerity, truthfulness, and fairness. Well, this week, I was waiting in line to check out at the dollar store. There were a lot of people in line and only one register going. A lady opened another register and offered me to go to her. But there were 3 other people in front of me. I offered the people in front of me to go first because they had been waiting in line longer. I could have received special treatment because I was a kid, but it's only fair that I had to go after the people that were waiting in line longer. Plus, no one likes someone who cuts in line.
That's true.
So, Warren, did you see or use integrity at all this week?
Wow. I don't get out of my house very much these days. And when I do, it's usually very small encounters. I don't have many encounters with people. In general, I am a very big fan of integrity. I try to live my life with integrity. It's probably the most important of the 4 qualities in lion to me personally. But yeah, I don't know that I have any, stories. I wish I can think of one, but again, it's not something that I sort of note or remember. If I encounter something like that, it's just, business as usual for me. It's not that special, because that's the way I want my life to be. I want integrity to be that part of my life. I think I notice a lack of integrity more than I notice integrity, because I think integrity for me is the norm. So I tend to notice a lack of it rather than the presence of it.
Well, we should always try and be lion strong at everything we do, shouldn't we?
We should.
And that's our show, folks. I want to thank the one, the only, the amazing Warren Davis for being on my show. It has been so much fun talking to you today. I think we learned a lot about programming games and Qbert.
Well, I'm glad. Tiberius, has been an absolute pleasure talking with you as well.
No problem. Do you mind giving your social media and website again?
Not at all. Not at all. Facebook, you can find me at facebook.com/WarrenDavis29. Twitter at WarrenDavis29. And my site is called WarrenDavisShop.square.site.
Okay. Also, you can find me on Facebook and Instagram at The Tiberius Show. And please be sure to visit The Tiberius Show on YouTube and subscribe. Also, be sure to listen to us next week on The Tiberius Show with your host, Tiberius Boy!